All right, welcome back to the IMNerd podcast, guys. I'm your host, Freeway. I'm here with my co-host, Kenny. And we also have our special guest who's been on the podcast many times now, Anthony Simpson, is returning, one of our good friends.
Let's not call him special. Can we relax?
He's pretty special.
Let's relax.
He's pretty special. But we're talking about probably one of the most controversial things that we've ever discussed on this podcast, actually. And it is going to be the slap heard around the world. Will Smith and Chris Rock, the epic situation that just happened at the 2022 Oscars. I think it's the 94th. If you are living under a rock, just to briefly recap what happened, Chris Rock was hosting the Oscars. Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith were sitting in the front row. And right before Questlove won an Oscar, Chris Rock made a joke calling Jada Pinkett Smith G.I. Jane, essentially, who is a bald character that Drew Barrymore played way back when. And Jada Pinkett, yeah, I think it was her. But Jada has her head shaved. She's essentially bald right now. And the reason why she's bald is because she suffers from alopecia, which, makes you have random bald spots in your hair. And it's a really traumatized thing for women to go through because typically women love their hair, that whole thing. Anyway, he makes the joke, which, he just kind of alludes to her being G.I. Jane. She doesn't like it. She makes a really nasty face when he says it. The crowd laughs, including Will Smith. And then Will Smith gets up from his seat, walks on stage, and physically assaults Chris Rock. He slaps him and then walks back to his seat and starts to scream, "Keep my wife's name," and I quote, "out of your fucking mouth," twice. The second time getting louder and using his hands to amplify. So when I first saw this video, which was, I guess, Sunday night when the Oscars actually happened, I didn't think it was real because the edited version on CBS was, it kind of looked like it was a skit. It looked like he made a joke because I saw Will laughing and then Will kind of got up. You see the smack, but it doesn't look, the smack doesn't look real. The sound effect almost seems fake too. And then Will kind of walks away and it looks like he's smirking and you don't get to see the part where he starts yelling. They cut that part out completely. So in the version that was actually broadcast to people watching the Oscars live, you don't see Will's outburst with the entire audience quiet.
Also, think the audio cuts out, doesn't it?
I think
the audio right.
The audio did cut out.
As Will starts walking on stage, I think the audio cuts out because that's the first one I saw, and I was like, "What the fuck?" And then I finally saw the other version.
So
and then everybody,
it was fake.
Yeah. Which and apparently everybody, even in the crowd, thought it was a
skit.
Fake. It was a skit.
Because these are two comedians, right? And they're two typically funny people. I just never in a million years thought, especially we're talking about Will Smith here, who's one of the most he
Will Smith
has
does comedy movies, but he's not a comedian.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a stand-up comedian, but he is a comedian.
He's a soft comedian.
Yeah, he's a comedian. All of his movies pretty much are him being funny, and even though he doesn't do stand-up, that's a different type of comedy, but I would classify him as an actor / comedian. He is.
I mean, he's a
funny guy.
You gotta admit, Fresh Prince is funny as fuck.
Yeah, it is one of the funniest shows, and you think about a lot of Men in Black, Bad Boys. Oh my god, Will Smith is. But the point is, anyway, no matter how you classify Will Smith as a person, him and Chris Rock's interactions, you would expect them to just be funny interactions because both of them are known to be funny people. So when I saw this,
Chris Rock thought it was going to be funny too.
Hold on. It's a funny interaction. This is a funny interaction.
It's funny. I actually have a picture up here right now of Chris Rock being slapped and he is laughing. He kind of looks like the Joker. If the Joker was black.
You think that's what he's doing in that moment? You think he's laughing?
Bro, I swear it looks like he's laughing right there.
It looks like he's going, shit.
Honestly, to me, I shared the meme in our group chat, and it was the one where you see Spider-Man from the recent No Way Home movie beating up on Green Goblin in the hallway, where he's literally mounting him. He's straddles his face and he's punching him, and you see Green Goblin looking up, he's smiling. That's the energy Chris Rock looked like he's giving in this background picture. But yeah, I just didn't think it was real. And when he goes back to his seat, Chris Rock says "Holy shit!" Will Smith just smacked the shit out of me. And he says, "Well, that was the greatest night in television history." It's very awkward. It's very quiet. And the whole thing, it's just out of hand. There's so many layers to this. You're going to hear me say that a lot during this episode. I think this is a multi-layered issue. This entire thing, there's been a ton of quote unquote think pieces There's been a lot of controversy. A lot of people are split. There's issues about race that I think have not, like, they should not really play a part in it, but like everyone has their opinions on this. There's so many layers to it.
Absurd that race has anything to do with this. I don't understand how this has anything to do with race. Like,
yeah, I don't think this is
a white. That's why you don't get it. You just don't understand, Kenny.
I mean, to be fair, Will Smith got a fresh lineup. Like, compare their hairlines right now.
Honestly,
Chris Rock don't got a lineup. I'm just saying.
Will Smith, his haircut is sharp as fuck, but he was expecting to fully win this award. Also, before we get into the full discussion, arguments, and whatever we're gonna do with this, I do want to say it is wild that after smacking Chris Rock, physically assaulting this man, screaming at the top of his lungs, Will Smith then proceeds to win the Oscar for Best Actor in a Leading Role, which is an insane Oscar to win. It's very difficult to win, obviously. He ends up being like Denzel Washington, Andrew Garfield, and a couple other people. He wins the award after this incident. I just think that is insane. That's going to go down as one of the craziest things in Black history. Like, it's just such an absurd thing.
Does Will Smith go on stage and smack Chris Rock if the timeline's reversed? If he wins the award first and then the joke happens?
There are so many variables to that. I thought about that scenario, but I also thought about, like, so does he smack him if he won the award already? So he's like on a high, right? Like he's already, like nothing can really go wrong after you've already won the award. I feel like maybe it doesn't happen. The other question that people ask, does he smack him if Chris Rock was a white person? And that's where people started to insert race into it. Like, go ahead.
The timeline where Will Smith goes up on stage to smack Chris Rock and Chris Rock dodges. And then Will Smith is just chasing Chris Rock
around the stage. That would have been so bad. Honestly, there's so many outcomes that
if he did a Kimbo slice dodge, like just a real, like if he just
imagine that timeline.
One of my favorite tweets that I saw during this night was, there's no fucking way you're gonna walk up on stage, slap me, and comfortably walk back to your seat. I would have been up there embarrassing the entire Black community. Like that tweet had me dying, because that's the kind of energy, like, I choose violence. Like, I'm, Cersei Lannister was one of my favorite characters in Game of Thrones. If somebody slapped me on stage, I don't know if I would have the professionalism and the composure to not retaliate the way Chris Rock just handled it so well, like scarily well.
It's something that frustrates me a lot about, I've seen a lot of takes, and I'm honestly shocked at the amount of takes of people calling Chris Rock a bitch and like saying what Will Smith did was amazing, whatever. I want to get it out real quick. It's been briefly mentioned before, but I'm a gigantic Will Smith stan. Bad Boys is like one of my favorite movies. I've talked about it a bunch. I fucking love Will Smith. Part of it is like Philadelphia bias, whatever. But after seeing this, I was like, man, that's some sucker shit. Like, it was the way it played out was so fucking sucker. And Chris Rock was just a goddamn champion. Like, he just eats the hit. Will Smith is way bigger than him, by the way. And he just like,
that's the other thing.
He just eats the slap, and then he kind of like, he comments on it. And then he just he just lets the show go on. Like, he doesn't make it he doesn't continue the clownery. Like,
So after the slap happened, Chris Rock, he says that comment about how, it's the greatest night in television history. Will Smith yells at him, "Keep my wife's name out of your fucking mouth." And Chris Rock says, "Dude, it was a G.I. Jane joke." And he said, Will Smith repeats that line again. And then he says, "Okay, I will." Like, calm. Yeah. It's kind of one of those like, wow, you're really mad about this. And I didn't expect this kind of reaction. You could tell, like, Chris Rock is genuinely surprised by the way he says, I will, calm down. Like, it's not my favorite. That serious. Yeah. But, here's the thing. So here's one of the first things that I'll say. You can say whatever you want. We all have the ability, especially with the internet. Social media has definitely changed the way people interact with other human beings. I think most of our interactions are actually virtual now, more than we interact with people, especially now during the pandemic that we're still technically in, right? A lot of our interactions are through computer screens. And this has made people very brazen about the things that they say to other human beings, because you don't have to see the emotion of another person when you say anything. So I've been called all kinds of crazy things online that people probably would not say to my face, right? Because that's just what the computer does. A lot of people make the jokes about Xbox back in the day, the game chats, and how, you just get called the N-word, the F-word, all types of stuff. I'm not going to blatantly say them here, but like, you guys know what I'm talking about. I'm black, right? So you get called everything online. And that has made people think that it's okay to just say whatever you want without consequence. Now, in real life, you can say still, just like you can online, whatever you want to a person, but you cannot control how they react. And while we can debate on, was it appropriate for Will Smith to smack Chris Rock, to physically assault him for saying that his wife, I guess, looked like G.I. Jane, could play G.I. Jane in the next movie or whatever. Was it okay for him to do that? That's one layer. The other thing is controlling how someone reacts. You never, ever know what someone is going through and like what will make them snap, right? Like, you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah. But yeah, go ahead.
So my thing is, I don't agree with Will Smith smacking Chris Rock. Like, there's no part of me that's like, that isn't an appropriate reaction to what he said. Like, that joke and that reaction, I don't even know if I want to call that a joke, if I'm being completely honest.
It wasn't really a joke.
It wasn't funny. Like, it honestly wasn't even, there was, to me, but here's the thing, I always have to I try to empathize. I try to think about it from someone else's perspective, right? I don't have alopecia. I'm not a black woman. I don't have a bald head. I have my hair, whatever. I also don't cry about like having a bald head or having this illness. So I'm not affected by it at all. Like, I can't relate to her situation whatsoever. I don't know how she actually feels about the fact that her head is shaved. And I don't know how much she cries to her husband, Will Smith, behind closed doors, or what they go through. I don't know anything about these people's relationship. I only know them from movies, and that's fucking it. And the things that they disclose on Red Table Talk. I know nothing else. So when he said the G.I. Jane thing, to me, I wouldn't think anything of it personally. But apparently that was a breaking point for Will Smith, who felt like he needed to stand up for his wife or like protect his wife. And to him, that meant physically assaulting a fellow comedian / actor / friend.
Now, I'm going to have to disagree that it was a breaking point, because if it were a breaking point, I don't think he would have laughed at first.
That's why I think it was like some sucker shit, because
it was kind of,
he laughs at the joke, and then Jada, you see the camera, like he's laughing and Jada's like, she's pissed.
Yeah, Jada's not having it.
And so the camera cuts, and so either one of two things happens. Either he then sees his wife's face and then feels like, oh, I have to do something because she's upset, or she legit says something to him and then he goes up and does something.
Or, and I'm going to offer this point, and a lot of people say this, and I think this is valid. This was mentioned on the Breakfast Club. Will Smith's laugh might not have actually been a laugh at the joke. There's a high chance that the laugh was genuinely one of those things that people do just because everyone else is laughing. So you kind of do a fake laugh, like a ha ha, but but you actually don't find it funny. Obviously, we don't know. Neither one of us on this podcast, we have no idea why he laughed. Maybe he thought that, because to me, it wasn't even anything to laugh at. Like, as I was watching it, right? Like, literally, me and you, Kenny, we have a really crass sense of humor. I don't even think that shit was funny that he said. I'm being completely honest. It just wasn't.
I don't think he really thought it was, because he even says like, it's a light, like he even says like it's just like a nothing thing. Like he's like, oh, whatever, like it's like a light one or whatever.
Yeah, like that, because we know Chris Rock can really go in. Like Chris Rock.
Well, he says right after he says like, okay, I will. Like, I'm not going to say your wife's name. He mumbles. He goes, oh, I coulda. Like, he makes it clear he had some heat. He makes it clear he had heat.
And I heard Anthony mention last night on the Critical Hit Plus stream, like how when he heard that Will Smith smacked Chris Rock over a joke, he was like, I gotta hear this joke.
Yeah,
that's valid, right? Because to me, that makes so much sense. If you heard that Will Smith, of all people, smacked someone because they made a joke, right? You would be like, whoa, what? This joke has to be insane.
I was like, this joke must have been foul as fuck.
Yes. And then you hear the joke, and you probably were just like me. You were probably like, what the fuck?
I was like, where's the joke?
Yeah, like
where are the jokes?
Yeah, like where are the jokes? Like to me, to you, like I think a lot of people watching it was kind of like, that didn't seem like an equivalent reaction to what he said. But the laugh, I specifically want to talk about the laugh because again, we're not in the head.
It could have just been like a nothing laugh.
It could. I just want to, because you said one of two things. I think it's like one of three things. It could have been she said That's something, fair. Or he saw her, right? He saw his wife. Because she clearly didn't like it, right? So either she said something to him blatantly, that's one. Two, he saw her and was like, okay, I'm disgusted by this and I should have been laughing, that's two. And three is he laughed nervously or just like, because literally the whole room kind of did like a chuckle type of thing.
Yeah.
And you're at the Oscars, he's an actor. It's one of those things like, oh, I'm just laughing because it seemed like something to laugh at. Then you think about what was said and you're like, wait a second, that's actually not funny. I don't know which of those three happened, but I think it is one of those three. Whatever one it is, to me, it still doesn't justify him, again, physically assaulting him. Like, I don't agree with him attacking Chris Rock. I want to make that very clear at the start of this discussion that his reaction to that quote unquote joke did not warrant a physical assault of Chris Rock.
I want to say, like, also, I've heard so many people say, like, well, you don't understand, like, you know, it's never okay to make fun of a woman and like the things she's going through and like all that. Just people are saying a lot of stuff, right? And first of all, I tend to take the opinion that, like, legit, he's a stand-up comedian. It's his job to say things. People have to remember that all of you, have all laughed at a joke that somebody else was offended by.
Yep.
Most of comedy is that. Most of making jokes is just that. And then there's always the defense of, well, that wasn't even funny. A comedian's job is to be funny. It's like, it wasn't funny to you. Somebody laughed at whatever, you know, etc. So first of all, but second of all, the whole reason why they get comedians and things like that to go to the Oscars is to take the air out of the room, because everybody's there being all. They
always have a comedian host the Oscars every year,
and their job is to roast the people in the crowd. That's what they do every year. The comedians roast the people in the crowd. That's kind of the point. So if you go to the Oscars has been around now for however many years.
94th. That was the 94th Oscars.
Years. You know what the comedians do at the Oscars. They poke fun and make jokes at the actors, etc. expense.
They might actually think that shit now.
Yeah, so here's the thing. This is what I've seen online about that too. There's so many layers to this. I saw people say, well, they're not at a comedy show. They're not at a comedy club. They didn't go to see Chris Rock do comedy. They came to be acknowledge that I'm receiving an award or I may be receiving an award. Not to be roasted. Not to
like, you know what Oscars are.
Not to be roasted on my physical appearance and not to be roasted on my illness. Now, let's add the fact that, again, comedians do make fun of people and groups of people all the time. My favorite comedian, full disclosure, is Dave Chappelle. And he goes in on everybody. He calls gay people or like LGBT people, the alphabet people. He goes in on white people. He goes in on racists, Republicans. He goes in on literally everyone. He goes in on every type of group of people. He even goes in on specific people. And to stand-up comedians, a lot of times no one is safe. That's kind of how they roll. Like, no one is really safe. I think for Will Smith, I didn't know until after that Chris Rock has made many jokes about the Smiths throughout his career. Like, there's a compilation out there right now on YouTube of just Chris Rock fucking with the Smiths, like just constantly making jokes about them. I think the most recent
people saying like Chris Rock had this come in for years
because of that. So one of the things that he said was I think in the 2016 Oscars or something, or Grammys, whatever it was that he was on.
It's so funny.
He mentioned it was when Oscar's So White, when that was trending. Yep. Oscar So White, Chris Rock said, Jada Pinkett Smith says she's boycotting the Oscars. He's like, that's like me boycotting Rihanna's panties. Like, how am I going to boycott something that I haven't been invited to?
And then he says, and then shout out to Chris Rock for like shooting his shot. He goes, that's an invitation I would very much accept. Like, so shout out to shooting the shot.
So he makes that joke. Then there's another video about how Jada Pinkett Smith was upset that her husband wasn't nominated for one of his serious roles for an Oscar. And he says something about, like, you know, what's really offensive is that he got paid $30 million to do like whatever
Wild West.
Yeah, one of his really bad movies. And so that was another joke. And then it's just like, there's more in the compilation. I'm not going to go through every single one, but basically there is a history of Chris Rock making fun of the Smiths. And I'm starting to wonder if behind the scenes, like something that the public doesn't really know or are fully aware of, that they actually do not like each other. I feel like Jada and Chris Rock, even if Will and Chris Rock are actually cool, I don't think Jada and Chris Rock are. I think that there's actually tension between those two people. I just feel like from her body language, from what he said at this Oscars, and also because apparently she was happy after what happened. Like, she was
so happy when Will Smith gets his acceptance speech, when he gets the Oscar, and he goes up there and he's like, I'm a protector, I'm a defender, God sent me here as a vessel of love. and like I defend my
I'm
family.
a river to my people.
He legit says he says I'm a river to my people.
He quotes Lawrence of Arabia. I look, Will Smith, I'm sorry, you lost respect in my eyes, buddy.
They cut to Jada and she has this smug smirk on her face and she's like nodding her head.
I think
she's
behind
like,
closed doors, Jada has mentioned to Will in passing that she does not like Chris Rock and that she's probably annoyed, like, but think about who's hosting. And I just hope that we can get through this. You know, I think that they have those kind of, I think that she vents that type of thing to him. Nothing wrong with that. People don't like people for whatever reason.
I'm Will Smith. I don't like August. It's my least favorite month.
Exactly. So there's definitely people that you just don't like for whatever reason. And I think that what happened is between her maybe confiding in him, her husband, about how she felt about Chris Rock, and then Chris Rock, you know, him making yet another joke at the Smiths' expense was probably not only that, but the whole country has been making fun of Will Smith. He's been the new Jordan crying meme.
Yeah.
He's pretty much been that the last 2 years because
that's on them though.
When the whole August Alsina thing came out, yeah, they put that out themselves. That whole Red Table Talk
okay. So what really happened there? Because I didn't keep up with it, and as someone that is in an open marriage, I'm like,
so I
would like to know why Will Smith was crying.
So as best I can, basically on Red Table Talk, there was an episode about Jada Pinkett Smith having what was referred to, and I'm sure you heard this word be used, an entanglement with her son Jaden's friend August Alsina. So this is Jaden's friend.
That's fucked up. And it's not fucked up that it's another dude. It's fucked up that it's like her son's friend.
It's not only her son's friend, but also apparently August Alsina, who suffers from mental health issues, he's been very vocal about that. He mentioned how, and also Jada mentioned, she admitted to it, that August Alsina was in a very dark place, and she was kind of acting as
she fucked him out of it? I'm sorry. Continue.
She was kind of acting as a pseudo therapist, for lack of a better word. I don't know what to really call it, but when you're kind of consoling somebody and trying to help them through a dark place, whatever you want to call that type of person. So she was kind of being a motherly therapist-like person to her son's friend, and ends up weird.
All right.
And ends up in a sexual relationship with her son's friend. And Will Smith admits how he wasn't fully there for his wife when she needed him. There's also an allusion, he doesn't blatantly say it, but there's an allusion to him also stepping out on his marriage, to him also, like, you know, she stepped out on her marriage. People think they have an open relationship. They shut that down and said they don't have an open relationship. So I guess at that point, so apparently they just cheated on each other, which is, you know, that just happens, right? Like that we're not going to act like that's not abnormal. Like that's just not abnormal. But the whole entanglement thing with the kid who's your son's best friend or one of your son's close friends and you're being his therapist, like fucking your therapist is crazy. Like that is
what you just described to me is
it's predatory too.
And it's super predatory. You like that is the equivalent of like that trope in like fantasy where the girl was either assaulted or almost assaulted, and she's like, you know, she's just gone through that traumatic experience, and the guy like starts rubbing her inner thigh because, you know, nothing makes you feel better or recover from trauma than getting it fucked out of you. Like what?
Yeah.
Man.
Nothing helps you recover from an assault than sexual assault.
So there's a movie called The Last Duel, and that exact scenario you just said literally happens in that movie, where one of the main characters is actually sexually assaulted, and her husband comes back home, and he says to her, and she confesses like, "Hey, your best friend assaulted me while you were gone," because this is like Game of Thrones time, so they had to travel by horseback. He was gone for a very long time. Comes back, and she's like, "Your best friend came. He sexually assaulted me," and he's pissed. But then he's like, "Well, get on the bed," and she's like, "What?" And he's like, "I'm not going to have him be the last person who was inside of you." It is very dark.
That's gnarly. Wow.
It's very dark. Very, very dark. It's called The Last Duel. It came out last year. The movie's actually really good. It's actually about that. It's about whether she was telling the truth or not, and she stands trial and everything. It's a really good movie. But not to get too far sidetracked, I just wanted to throw that out there because that situation you were mentioning was not an ass pull. That's like a real thing. Yeah. Like I don't want people listening to this think that like, what the fuck is he talking about? This is a thing that has happened so much that it's now in films, and it's not even in just that 2021 movie. It's been in so much shit that women have been treated this way for years, for centuries.
I've been talked to by
But yeah, so this is a real thing that does unfortunately happen. But yeah, her relationship with August Alsina is definitely predatory. There were all types of think pieces on that too, and it was a meme for a month about the word entanglement and how she refused to call it what it was you had an affair with a kid, and you stepped out on your marriage. Who knows if it was in retaliation for something Will might have done, but the point is they made this information public. And so Will Smith was crying during the episode because he felt like he hadn't been a good husband, and he became the new Jordan crying face meme because when you put something out on the internet, that's just what it is. Like the people can use it however they want. Not everyone's going to sympathize with your situation. A lot of people are going to make jokes about it. They're going to make fun of it. That's just what the internet has become. Is as a standard. I think that, so we say all this to say, because the original point was a boiling point. And Will Smith has been teased over the last couple of years about this entire situation, the August Alsina thing, his wife stepping out on him, and how hard he's been going to protect Jada when she's out here apparently sleeping with someone else. People have been making fun of him, and he's been getting trolled, and he's been being asked these crazy questions when he goes to red carpets, even though he has this movie out where apparently he played, a great character. He did a great job. He won the Oscar, so he apparently killed it, but no one's asking him about the movie. They're just asking him about, are you and your wife in an open relationship? How do you feel about your wife sleeping with August Alsina? That type of thing.
Yeah. But that's one of the reasons why it feels like some sucker shit to me is that, like, all of this information's out there. You guys put it out there, and I understand that it's annoying, and I'm not, like, the paparazzi can be very, very frustrating to people. Like, for example, the whole Britney Spears thing where, it wasn't until years later where everybody is kind of like feeling sorry for Britney Spears and like free Britney, etc., for the shit that the paparazzi put her through. And it wasn't okay then, and it's not okay now in like the paparazzi constantly bombarding people and, intruding on your life. At the same time, though, they put all this information out there and they kind of already know how people act. But then it really did feel like in that moment, he was going up to smack Chris Rock as like a way to save face. Like he's tired of all this other stuff, so he breaks or whatever, and he goes.
Yeah, and I'm going to take it out on you. Now, here's one of the things that another layered thing. He attacks Chris Rock, who is a pretty small guy, especially compared to Will Smith. And people have asked, like, and even you, I heard you make the joke, if that's 50 Cent hosting the Oscars, right? If 50 Cent made that same
that
joke,
was 50 Cent.
How does this play out? I also wonder if he sized him up, because you got to imagine people do choose their opponents. Like people pick who they want to tease, who they want to bully. Typically bullies don't fuck with other people who are their size. Like when there's a bully, usually it's a big human being, someone who's really tall, really big, and they pick on people who are small. Like that is the typical bully.
Chris Rock's small, he's skinny. Like Will Smith isn't jacked, but he's bigger, both height-wise and width-wise.
And he's also been an action star a lot of the time. Like Will Smith is he's been trained physically, and he's done a lot of action roles where we've seen Will Smith buff his shit. Like
I Am Legend.
Yeah, I Am Legend. There's a scene where you see him pretty much naked. He's a pretty diesel guy when he wants to be, but in general, even without him training or anything, he's just much bigger than Chris Rock. Yeah. And you have to wonder if part of the reason why he physically assaulted this man is because this is somebody who he knows won't fight back. I've never heard of Chris Rock ever being in a physical altercation with anyone. So there's an element of, is he picking his opponents, and does that make him a bitch for doing that? Because that's definitely a question. Like, if it's Vin Diesel hosting the Oscars, if it's 50 Cent hosting the Oscars, does he still go up there and smack that person for making the exact same joke?
Yeah, because like 50 Cent, although not a comedian, he's a jokester. 50 Cent throws out clips and jokes and things like that.
He's a jokester.
Yes.
Sure.
50 Cent, 1,000,000%, I could see him making the exact same comment.
If he would have said way worse. He would have actually said something foul.
So does Will Smith get out of his chair and fucking... Because, like, all fucking respect, and I'm, like, so happy Chris Rock didn't fight back. Like, I'm so happy that he, like, was, like, the professional in the situation, and he, like, kept the show going. However, if you go up... If it was 50 Cent, for example, 50 Cent's not keeping the show going. Like, it would have got bad.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been smack and walk back to your seat calmly.
No.
Sure. With a lot of people, it wouldn't have gone that way. And I think that that's part of the whole, like, did he really pick his opponent in that situation? Does it make him even more of a coward to attack someone who will not attack you back? And It's a very sticky situation in general. I was very uncomfortable watching the unedited version because, like I said, when I first saw the clip, I was like, "Well, that's fucking fake. That's a skit." Like he smacked and walked back to a chair, and then Chris Rock says this little thing. I was like, "This is obviously a skit." And then when I saw the unedited version, and you see everyone's face and how quiet it is when Will is yelling, it's so quiet. I was like, "Holy shit, this is real!" And I can't believe that what he said made him react like that. And I get it. Again, I started this podcast off saying you can't control how people react. I can go out here and say whatever I want. Somebody could call me the N-word tomorrow, and I could retaliate physically. Like they said words to me, and this has happened. Like black people have retaliated physically to being called the N-word. There's clips all online on Instagram right now of recent events where random Karens and Walmarts, random fucking people will just call a black person the N-word, and they'll get fucked up for it. Like you can't control how people react. So while yes, violence is not always the answer, some people choose violence. Some people just, so you don't know what's going to happen. Again, it doesn't make it right, but you just do not know how someone's going to react to the words you say.
It's one of those things too where the setting and the context is always important.
Setting and context matter a lot.
Like if Fraser goes outside and he goes shopping tomorrow and somebody just starts calling him the N-word, that's a lot different than like if he goes to an award show where we know there's going to be a comedian that's going to roast people.
You know a comedian's hosting it. You know the comedians always roast some of the people at the fucking award show. Like that's just this is not new. Like we're not breaking new ground by having a comedian host and a comedian make jokes about the actual guest. That's just not that's nothing new.
I brought this up the other day. This is in contrast to Will Smith years ago in France smacked a paparazzo because it
was much lighter. Granted, I know exactly what you're talking about. It wasn't in like a super aggressive and harsh way, but he did smack the guy.
Yeah, but in this instance, I think Will Smith was in the right in that this guy runs up and like forces like this random guy, and he sexually assaults Will Smith. He forces a kiss on him. That's sexual assault, right?
Yep.
And then Will Smith smacks him in retaliation. He's like, "The fuck's wrong with you?"
Yeah, because you imagine Will Smith did that to somebody. It is 100%. Like if it's sexual assault. If I fucking walk up to a random girl right now and kissed her, that's not okay.
Yeah, that's sexual assault. So in that instance, it's like, no big deal. I don't think Will Smith's a bad guy.
Yeah, but that was barely even news. That story just kind of blew over. Like nobody was. I don't even think Will Smith got sued for that or anything. I think it just kind of like, all right, well, that happened.
I mean, he wouldn't get sued if it went to court. It would be,
But I'm not kind of surprised that the guy
himself. So
right, I'm surprised the guy didn't try to sue because Will Smith is worth hundreds of millions. You know what I mean? Just try to get a bag. But yeah, you were right, Anthony. Like, there's no way that would blow over well in court. Like, dog, you kissed him. You kissed him unprovoked. You can't do that. How do you guys feel about? So, I normally am on the side of comedians when they go in on groups of people or whatever like that. I usually think, comedy has a certain pass when it comes to discussing issues because, again, my favorite comedian is Dave Chappelle, and I can't be a hypocrite because Dave Chappelle makes fun of, again, the LGBTQ community. He makes fun of the black community. He makes fun of OJ. He makes fun of rape victims when he talks about Bill Cosby, one of his best Netflix series that came out during the pandemic. I think in 2020, he talks about he rapes and he saves, talking about Bill Cosby and all his victims and stuff. I like a lot of Dave Chappelle's comedy, as harsh as it is. And so I'm wondering because on one hand, I do feel bad about Jada's condition. I'm not going to lie. Like, I feel bad that she had to cut her hair off because she has alopecia and she has an illness. And I think I sympathize with that part. My hair is fine. Like, I don't have that issue. So I can only sympathize so much, but I only sympathize because I had a grandmother who passed away from cancer. And obviously, you know what happens when you have cancer. You go through chemo, you lose your hair, stuff like that. So I know, from my family, what it's like for somebody to literally cry and feel bad, a woman, because she lost her hair. Like, I know what it's like for a woman to literally cry because she lost her hair. And so a part of me does sympathize with being mocked or made fun of because of your illness that you can't control, your appearance that you can't, she could wear, she could wear a wig, she could do whatever, but at the end of the day, you did still lose your hair and everyone knows it. It is what it is. And she put out this whole thing about having alopecia and her journey with that and how difficult that's been. How do you guys feel about that?
As a bald person, no, I'm kidding. It's different.
Is it?
No, I mean I'm not a woman, so like men going bald is much more.
It is.
socially
It's so different.
acceptable than
Yeah,
It
it's
is,
way
women going
different.
bald.
it's one of
So-
those things that I do find interesting where it's like, if you make fun of a fat guy, nobody cares. If
Yeah.
you make fun of a fat woman, you're the worst person on the planet.
This is true. There are double standards
True.
for sure.
And
There's
it's like,
for sure double standards on this.
like there is what is called male pattern baldness, and it's to the point where it's common, it's acceptable that a lot of guys do go bald. However, it doesn't change the fact that those guys do feel like shit. There's a reason why there's a whole bunch of products out there to get your
Tons.
hair back, to
Tons.
regrow your hair. I know people personally that has gone through it. So like those men go through some situations some get really depressed and emotional because they're losing their hair, but nobody cares, and it's an open season to make fun of them at all times. But when it happens to a woman, all of a sudden you're evil. And things like that, I have a really hard time feeling bad because it's like, I'm not here for the double standard. Like I don't like.
Okay, but how about this? So
Yeah, go
just
ahead.
because people don't treat men the way women get treated, or they don't treat women the way men get treated, does not necessarily make it okay for us to diminish women who experience this, like to diminish their experience and just kind of, you know what I mean? I get what you're saying. Like men don't get the same treatment when they're going bald. They get made fun of, or they just like, people talk about the George Jefferson, right? That's like the classic when you're bald in the middle, but your sides are still growing. People talk about the George Jefferson, and that's a common thing that you just hear, not in the black community, but just period. Like, oh God,
period. George Costanza.
Yeah, like people talk about that shit all the time, and no one, like you said, when people say, "Oh, he has the George Jefferson, he needs to cut that shit off," no one really bats an eye or gets thrown in a frenzy about it. But does that make it okay that men are teased about it and no one cares, and so women should be teased?
Of course not. I actually loved my hair. I had really nice hair.
You did have nice hair for
and
a
no
year.
one and shut the fuck up. See, and that's it. That's it. Now, if I want to Philadelphia and smack the shit out of Kenny, would I be wrong?
I
Would I be
mean,
wrong for that?
listen, I can't tell you how to feel if people made fun of you for something. It's just that, you know, it's hard because it's an illness. She has this illness that she can't control, and she obviously didn't like the joke. It was in poor taste. So I do want to say this: the joke was trash. Like, the joke was not good. It wasn't funny. It was definitely in poor taste, I feel like, because it's a joke about someone's actual fucking illness, which I don't think that's necessary to do. I think Chris Rock is funny without doing that. But I also, again, just don't agree with like him being slapped for making a joke.
What's interesting is I also think I've seen that she's talked about it a lot, her condition, and she has even compared herself to G.I. Jane. And when I figured that part out, because she has compared herself to G.I. Jane on some occasion, I honestly think that Chris Rock knew that. There's no way for me to know that without talking to him personally. But I think she has publicly compared herself to G.I. Jane already. So I think when Chris Rock said that, he was like making a soft joke, but also he knew that this was something she said about herself. And so he just also said it. And I think you could, because she compared herself to G.I. Jane in terms of being strong and et cetera and things like that. So I think he was also doing, like, I think it was like a joke, but also this, like, she also made the reference.
So did you know, according to Charlemagne from the Breakfast Club, Charlemagne the God, he spoke to Chris Rock the day after the Oscars, and Chris Rock told Charlemagne that he did not know she had alopecia. So when he made the joke,
he just thought she shaved her head.
He thought she just shaved her head. This is, again, I don't know if that's actually true, but Charlemagne, I mean, I don't know why he would lie about this on the radio, because he could be sued over this. But like, he said that he talked to Chris Rock personally, and that he said he did not know she had that condition. Now, that could be true.
I didn't know she had it.
I didn't know either. So.
Yeah, that could be totally, because like, you're not responsible to know the health conditions of everybody in the audience, right? Like,
that would be ridiculous.
Like, Angelina Jolie has breast cancer. I know that, but like, a lot of people just don't. A lot of people don't know that, and they don't. It's not your responsibility to necessarily know that either, right? Like, that, you're not held responsible because you didn't know Angelina Jolie has breast cancer. Like, that's not your responsibility. But people were like, well, does that change things? Because I want to talk about all the layers of this, right? Like, he doesn't know. And you're telling me right now, this is news to me, I didn't know this, that apparently she has compared herself or likened herself to G.I. Jane. I don't know what context she said it in. Like,
I don't know the exact context either.
I don't know the context, but she's compared herself in some way to G.I. Jane herself. So if he's saying this this joke, and again, I don't even know if it was really a joke. It really just kind of wasn't to me, but again, whatever. It's coming from a comedian, so I guess people are going to call it a joke no matter what.
Look, the only thing that made it a joke is that Will Smith had the punchline, because like it wasn't a joke.
It just wasn't.
It was just an off comment.
Yeah, I think it was just like a passing thing. It was like part of the roast mindset of the Oscars, and that people get. It was just kind of like a passing.
How do you feel if he doesn't know that she has alopecia? I think it's clear how you feel, right? Like, I don't know you have this illness.
Even if he did know that she had it, and like to your earlier question, right, about comedians making jokes about demographics of people, blah, blah, blah,
they go in.
Stuff,
Dave Chappelle's my favorite. He goes in.
It honestly doesn't matter what joke you make as long as it's funny.
That's true. That is the golden rule.
If it's funny, it's cool. But if it's not, then people get upset.
That's true. And I know Kenny's about to talk about. I know you have something that you always say about this. You don't know. I'm gonna let you go into it, but I just want to say this before you start. I agree with you, Anthony, 100%. When it comes to comedians, there is kind of this golden unspoken rule. You can get away with really anything. I mean, anything, as long as that shit is funny.
Look, I was at a stand up for a friend. I was at a stand up show for a friend, and one of the comedians came out, and he said that he would like, the joke was that he would like to give the audience AIDS. That was the joke.
Right.
Now, saying that sounds fucking awful.
Yeah,
right?
Out of context, that sounds crazy.
But that joke was so fucking funny, and everybody was laughing their asses off.
And no one was super offended by it. I shouldn't say no one went up and slapped them. The general consensus in the room was laughter.
Yeah, because the setup and the execution of the joke was great.
Yeah,
like it was a good joke.
And so the same thing with Dave Chappelle's special, trigger warning, but he says about Bill Cosby, like, he rapes and he saves. And like, again, I love
every time I hear that, it's so fucked up.
It's so ridiculous, right? And a lot of people could be offended by that, like a lot of people. But the room erupted in laughter. It's still on Netflix. The room erupted in laughter because the setup and the whole thing, and Dave Chappelle, his mannerisms, his facial expressions, it was hilarious. Now, again, I'll let Kenny go into the golden rule about it's okay if people laugh, right? It's okay if it's funny. Kenny, how do you feel about that golden rule?
Well, I mean, yeah, so
with comedians, the problem with a joke, right? Like, you don't know.
At the end of the day, it's like, and I don't want to, I do repeat this a lot, but I don't want to take credit for it. I got this from the late Patrice O'Neill.
Okay.
Patrice O'Neill was an amazing comedian, but he was also somebody that got in a lot of trouble because he was he got real close to that line, and sometimes he blatantly just stepped over the line and said what. But the whole idea is that you don't know if a joke's funny, right, until you say it. And when a comedian's telling a joke and working on a joke, like, they have an idea for what is funny and what's going to be funny, but at the end of the day, you really don't know what's going to work. I know Bill Burr, for example, had a joke one time that made fun of veterans, right? And Americans, if you make fun of them veterans,
that's a big one.
But Bill Burr, he's in an interview one time says the very first time he told that joke, he told it to veterans. He made sure the very first time he told it, he went to like a veterans thing,
right?
And he told the joke to where the entire crowd was military people, and everybody laughed and loved the joke. And so he was like, "All right, cool." The next time he tells the joke, some random white lady gets up on stage and starts yelling at him and saying how he can't make fun of the veterans and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, lady, like, I told this joke to the you know what I mean? So it's like, you never know who is going to get offended. Like, there's so many times when somebody might say a black joke and all the black people love the joke, but then some random white guy is like, that joke is problematic.
Yeah, the white
guy, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, but that kind of highlights my entire thing and one of my main issues with the way that people have responded to this. And honestly, I don't really care about the slap itself and what happened between the Rocks and the Smiths or whatever.
Right.
Well, my biggest issue is people's fucking response to this slap. I didn't know, like, this is what Kim Kardashian wanted. Kim Kardashian wanted this. When she said she broke the internet, this is what she wanted, because this shit has
It really
like
did.
people are unfriending each other. They're like, "You're no longer my friend. I thought you were better," and I'm just like, "Yo, he just."
It's
like,
more controversial than that fucking dress from years ago.
But the issue that I have is if Jada was upset, she is entitled to her feelings, and I can't tell her
we can never change that.
But the people that are getting upset on her behalf can shut the fuck up. Y'all can shut the fuck up.
I do, yeah, that's true.
And that's kind of that's kind of like that's the whole thing, right? It's because like a lot of these people that are being upset on Jada's behalf probably laughed at a 9/11 joke. And if you're gonna have this,
or
like,
just jokes that target other people, like gay jokes and fucking, all
Chinese, dude. Chinese jokes, like I swear,
like
nobody bats an eye.
Who stands up for the Chinese? Who stands up for the Asians when they're made fun of?
There's so many like Chinese jokes that just like go, and nobody at any ever goes, "Hey man, that's fucked up," and they just go. Like Chinese, like people have no quarrels with making fun of Chinese people, and I feel like even today, like where everybody's become more progressive and more sensitive, I feel like there's still so many times where Chinese jokes just get over and nobody says anything about it.
Yeah, because typically no one's fighting for them the same way people fight for like the other demographics who are marginalized and stuff like that. Because I mean, Asian people are definitely a marginalized group of people. There's that whole thing that happened last year. I think it was last year where they were saying, "Stop Asian hate." There were hate crimes going on all across the country. Yeah. But yeah, people fly off with all kinds of Asian jokes all the time, and that's its own problem. I saw a lot of people saying like this is a black woman's problem because like black women in their hair. There's already that stigma that has been placed on black women about their hair. We've had media say things like nappy headed hoes way back in the day when we were kids. You heard that said about the WNBA players. There's been all types of things about black women and their hair. So this is a very touchy subject to a demographic of people that is not represented in this podcast. Like we're all men, two of us black men. And we like, it's always one of those things where I will say this before doing this episode, I did kind of want to reach out to a black woman just to have that perspective about how they feel in it, because a lot of the people that I see up in arms about it and talking about this, who feel like Will Smith did the right thing or he's protecting, were black women who feel like I'm tired of people getting to discuss black women's appearance and to attack black women's appearance, and no one stands up for us. Like no one says anything when black women are made fun of. You get all of these black men who literally pretend to be women and parodied us, like Martin and Jamie Foxx and like all of them, Tyler Perry, like it's Eddie Murphy. Apparently, I'm not a black woman, so I can't speak from that perspective, but apparently a lot of them do not like that shit. They don't like that people target their appearances and over exaggerate it or make fun of how they look and their appearance and things like they can't necessarily change, like being curvaceous and stuff like that. And they feel like the retaliation that Will Smith made is correct, and they want that to be a lesson or kind of like a warning that don't target us anymore. Like this is what could happen to you, so proceed with caution in the future. And
what I wish happened if that's the case, though, because I think this goes back to what if it was 50 Cent on stage. I wish Jada got up and did it herself then. Like
honestly, yes.
Like if Jada got up and smacked him, I still wouldn't agree with it. But I think it makes a different statement.
That
would have been a very different statement, because I think that we would be having a completely different conversation.
I do think so.
Because she was the target.
We got all the hoteps coming out being like, yeah, that king protected his queen, and I'm just like, man, that energy is toxic as fuck.
But he was also just kind of protecting his own ego. Like Will Smith,
that's what it felt like to me. Honestly,
Will Smith wrote in his book, and I got this from The Breakfast Club, so this is a take that I recently heard. But apparently, Will Smith in his book that just came out, he talked about how he suffers from trauma as a child when his dad used to beat his mom. He grew up in a household where his dad would beat his mom, and he always felt like a coward and like he was inadequate and that he couldn't protect women in his life because he watched his dad beat his mother his entire childhood and he did nothing about it. So he already has a chip on his shoulder about women in his life being unprotected while in his presence.
Okay, now, well, if that's the case, this is not a healthy way to deal with that trauma. Right. That's not a healthy way to process that.
Well, that's the thing. It's not healthy at all the way he's handled, because he's pretty much bottled this up. And now it's exploded and it's manifested into something violent And this could have gone any kind of way. Like, imagine if this didn't happen at the Oscars, but this just happened. Imagine if Will Smith was just interviewed by someone. You don't know if people have weapons. Like, you don't know if people can defend themselves in ways that might. That guy, like, I know Judd Apatow, he's a famous like producer. He said, Chris Rock could have fell to the ground and hit his head, and anything could happen. Right now, while that is such a like, if it didn't happen, I don't like to do those hypotheticals too much.
That's like super extreme.
Because Judd was like, he could have died. He literally said that in a tweet, which was just so ridiculous to me. Like, I kind of laughed at it because it was like, that's just so over the top.
There's a one, yes, he
Chris
could
Rock
have.
He could have flipped on in the air and fucking died.
Yeah, like he said, like he could have died, and like I get it. Yes, like anything could have happened, but like depending on the situation, like you don't know. Again, what the reaction is. Like Chris Rock could have just started fighting Will Smith, and yeah, anything could have happened. Chris Rock could have retaliated with a weapon later on in the night, and anything could have happened. Like there's a million possibilities. There's a million timelines.
That reminds me of this is one time when I was really young, right? I remember I was going somewhere with my friend Lamar and Ralph, and Lamar's like 3 or 4 years older than me, right?
Is he black?
And so all I'm gonna say is his name's Lamar. I mean,
Wow.
You show me how many fucking Irish people you know named Lamar.
Oh man, I always love asking you that question. Go ahead.
My name Lamar O'Shea. Like that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen.
I'm gonna find a white Lamar O'Shea now.
Yeah, I'm gonna find a Lamar O'Shea.
Anyway, though, we're walking and it's snowing out, and some random kid gets a snowball and he starts throwing snowballs at us, and we don't know who this kid is.
Right.
And Lamar ends up catching him and like holds him and like really like does a son moment. He goes, "Yo, man," and the kid's like younger than him. He might have been my age. He goes, "Yo, you don't know. I could have had a gun," and he just like randomly because the kid just starts like throwing snowballs at us and all this other shit. He's like, "Yo, I'm just letting you know, man. Like, you're throwing snowballs at me. Like, you don't know who I am."
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. And
I
like,
could be a loose cannon. I could be somebody who was incarcerated and I am institutionalized and I'm violent. I could be a violent criminal. You have no idea.
Exactly. And he's telling this kid because like the neighborhood we lived in isn't the best neighborhood. It's a neighborhood where people could have guns.
Yes.
And he was like, "Dude, you don't know me, and I just want you to know." He was like, "You just like don't throw like I could have had a gun."
Yeah,
and I
he's trying to help. He's trying to help. He's not. He's like, "Listen, you don't know how I could have reacted. You don't know me, and anything could have just happened. I could have been some lunatic who starts shooting at kids."
Yeah.
Over a snowball, because telling someone a joke, like I guess saying a joke about someone and then getting physically assaulted is not something that we expect. Like I'm gonna be honest. I'm a guy who I think I'm pretty funny, and I joke about people all the time. I have made jokes about people's appearance for sure. I've made jokes about people's everything. Like I've joked how pretty much every other human being has joked. I'm not some saint. I'm a human being.
Trust me, I'm a victim.
Yeah, exactly. I've made jokes about literally all of my friends, and like it's my friend, so I'm choosing in that case, like I'm choosing, oh, this is my friend, I can get away with this. I don't do it to random strangers, but I do make jokes that are definitely crass or off the cuff that are just like, holy shit, like how could you say that? But it's like, it's my friend, he's fine. You know what I mean? Like he's fine. I'm fine with that joke, or they're fine with that joke. But again, you just never know how someone's going to respond. Like you said in that scenario, well, your friend Lamar, like he's telling that person, look, you throw snowballs at me. You don't know if I have a pistol, and you don't know if I do have it, if I'm going to use it. You don't know if I'm a lunatic. You don't know what could happen.
Yep.
It doesn't make it okay. But again, just for your own protection, it's probably not best practice for you to throw snowballs at random strangers. I'm just telling you.
Strangers.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not good practice to go up on stage. This is another thing, and I know, once again, I don't know if this will end up happening, but I do think it's a possibility. It sets a bad example, Will Smith going up on stage and just smacking a comedian, because this could end up now happening at comedy shows where people think, oh, I can do that? Like I can. And two things. One, like don't do that. Yes. But number two, you're not Will Smith and you're not going to get away with it. I was about
to say that. Will Smith is Will Smith. And if you don't know what I mean by that, this is a rich and powerful man. So he literally was able to walk back to his seat, sit down, and nothing happened. The producers didn't come.
And then win an Oscar an hour later.
Nothing happened to him. Literally nothing happened to Will Smith. But that's not how it plays out for 99.9% of human beings in the world that just smack someone. 99.9% of the times, if a man smacks another man, there's going to be a physical altercation that could result in anything. Anything could happen. Will Smith was able to do what he did because he's a very privileged person. He's been rich borderline his whole life at this point.
Yeah,
Way
I mean,
more than he's 50
when
years
did Fresh
old.
Prince of Bel-Air come out? Like when
He's
he was
50 now.
19,
All
20?
you
He's
gotta
been
know
rich
is,
for longer than he hasn't. So
yes, he's been rich
Yeah.
way longer than he hasn't been. So like he's a very privileged person, and maybe that plays into this too. Maybe that's the reason why he felt so comfortable that he could do some shit like that. Like
Yeah.
because the way he walked back to his seat and just sat down is absurd to me. Like he didn't even expect a response from Chris Rock.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
kind of just like did it, turned his back on him. You just aggress someone, put your back to them, and just sat back down as though nothing happened. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
this has been a deep dive.
Indeed.
Will
It's a-
Smith versus Chris Rock. And that is honestly probably my biggest issue with the entire thing is that it has become a deep dive. It's become this really weird dialogue where I'm just
Yeah.
like, bruh, like he just slapped him. Why is this the thing that everybody's going off on? And like to the point that you were making earlier about like, you were like, oh, I was considering should I invite a black woman on, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So here's my feelings on that, right? I'm black and I'm gay. I may not be trans, I may not be a woman, I may not have a disability, but my black ass is gay. I get where you're coming from.
Right.
Like, like I feel like there's a certain point where like these oppression Olympics get like it gets too performative. It gets
Yeah,
too performative where you're like, well, I have like
Because everybody's got their own little problem, and everybody tries to say, "Well, you don't know what it's like for me." It's like, dude, like, I get it.
and like when people try to like hit me with that, I'm like, look, I'm a gay black man in America. I can empathize pretty heavily with where you're coming from. So like this to me, this situation, Will Smith smacking Chris Rock should not be the catalyst for let's talk about black women's hair. Like it's just not that deep. I just feel like it's just not that deep. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I get a bunch of flack.
Here's the thing. Anthony, I have struggled with this for the past 3 days. I don't know what the right, like, because like these are all opinions. All of these opinions expressed by us are our own individual feelings on it. Like me, Anthony, and Kenny, we all have our own individual opinions. I struggle because what you just said is how I kind of feel parts of that too. Like with the trauma Olympics that we kind of have, where it's like, well, Jewish people went through this, and black people went through this, and certain groups of, trans people go through this, and gay people go through this, and lesbians go through this, and the military, it's everyone, like a lot of different marginalized groups of people have their problems, and then we're like comparing them. And I hear a lot of people say, especially there was that famous, I think it's either Martin Luther King or Malcolm X, but says the most disrespected woman or the most disrespected person in the world is the black woman. There's like a famous speech about that and how black women are like the bottom of the totem pole. Like they're the lowest class of person. They're made fun of the most. They're the brunt of more jokes than everyone else. They're picked on the most. Just like they're the lowest class citizen compared to everyone else by the way America treats them. And I don't like the idea of just accepting that. Like I don't like but I'm not a black woman, but I don't like the idea of just being like, yeah, that's true. So like, let us compare. Every time you compare anything to a black woman's trauma, we say, well, it's a black woman, and because they're at the bottom of the totem pole, no one else can say anything about it. Like that.
Well, see, here's the important thing about that, right? Because Malcolm X was 100% right. That statement is absolutely right. But what a lot of people don't do when they hear statements like that is think about them, right? Because like if we modernize that statement, then the black trans gay woman with a disability is at the bottom of the totem pole.
Right. Like she,
right?
Yeah.
So like what you then have to do is like try to recontextualize what Malcolm X is saying and why he's saying it. It's not particularly that black women are at the bottom of the totem pole. It is understanding that the social dynamic of being black and then being not a man,
Right.
in particular, in American society is always like it just gets every short straw. They draw
Right.
every short
Like
straw.
I acknowledge that I have, even though I'm black, I have privileges because I am a man. Like I
Right.
acknowledge that is a thing. Like there are certain privileges that I have because I am male. Like that is just a fact. Like I have no problem admitting that whatsoever. Like that is just a undeniable fact. Being a man in this country in particular it just puts you at a higher class, technically, like than being born a woman. It's fucked up that it's like that, but that is the reality of the situation.
And no matter what demographic you're a part of, like excluding race, no matter what demographic you're a part of, race will always be like one of the final determining factors.
Yep,
If you're a part of the
100%.
trans community, then you will be more looked down upon if you are black and in the trans community.
Yes.
If you're a part of the gay community, then same thing.
Yeah,
right?
like adding
So-
black to it, adding woman to it, these things
So
compound.
it's understanding that him saying that statement isn't like, it's not set in concrete. It is what he said contextualized for the time that he said it. And in the time that he said it, being black and not a man in America, it's not a good combo as far as like society looks at you.
Yeah.
Right.
Also,
So
to add on to what you said, and like in that exact same situation, what he said is 100% true. But gay people existed back then too, but they were even
Right.
more right. But they weren't talking about that really at the time. But yeah, I mean, there's always kind of something to add to it.
Yeah, it's hard. That part of it is hard. Like you said, though, your original point was, I don't think that this is a conversation necessarily about black women's hair, right? Like, this is not.
I just hate that this is like the catalyst for having that conversation. Like, I'm just like, why? I don't know. It's just,
Well,
it's
I
dumb.
think our friend Nick the other day made a good point in that his stance on this was that he thinks it was wrong. He thinks it's wrong to physically assault somebody for saying a joke. But then on the note of it being about black women's hair, it's wrong regardless of what race Will Smith is. It was wrong, right? If Will Smith was white and Jada was white, it doesn't suddenly become okay or not okay. Like the situation, I think, is the same.
Yeah.
And I kind of agree with the idea of consistency where it's like, regardless of whether or not Chris Rock's white, black, or Chinese, whether or not Will Smith's white, black, or Chinese, the color of your skin has no indication on whether or not either side is right or wrong. Either side's right or wrong, depending on either side being right or wrong.
And I think the reason why people are defending it is because there's a stigma with black women and their hair. It's black people in our hair, honestly. Like, we're just, there's just been a stigma with our hair in general. The word nappy obviously goes all the way back to slave times, but like, there's a stigma in this country, and not just, I guess, in the world, really. There's a stigma about black people's hair. So that's why people are defending Will Smith's actions. They're adding layers to it that might not necessarily even be there for like Jada and Will, like the whole black hair thing. Like, maybe Will really wasn't thinking about a black woman's hair. Maybe he was really thinking about it like, it's just my
his
wife.
wife.
It's just my wife. White or black.
I guarantee you, in that moment, Will Smith wasn't like, "I'm going to stand up for all black women."
Yeah,
and
like, I don't
all
think
the black
Will
women
was
who
standing
are
up for all black
nappy-headed.
women.
I'm gonna go and smack the shit out of this motherfucker because how dare he?
That's such a good point, though, and this transcends this discussion. Something that I think is so frustrating about moments like this in general is the rest of the world analyzes it. You have to when things happen in the moment, you don't think about them. Like,
yeah, exactly.
When it happened, Will Smith didn't do a fucking dissertation in his head about the history of black women and their hair. He just reacted to his wife. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't thinking about history.
On emotions. It was completely an emotional reaction.
But then the internet and the world goes, "Oh, but this is what it really means, and this is why he did it." It's like, no, that's not what happened. Because when you're in real life situations, you're never thinking about all of that. You're just moving with whatever's happening right now.
So I said this. I'm a person who, in the past, I admit that I have been violent when someone has used words against me. As a teenager, there was a time where somebody said something about my mom that I did not like, and I literally smacked them. This is a fact. Someone said something about my mom. We were going back and forth. We were arguing back and forth. And he said something about my mom. It wasn't just your mom type of thing, which is like whatever. He said something for real. He said something about my mom, and I got up and smacked him. And he didn't see it coming. He didn't know it was going to happen, but I smacked him, right? And he didn't do anything about it. He could have retaliated. That's not even the point. But the fact is, I, in my past, have done this. And I was reacting off of pure adrenaline and the feeling I got when this person said something about my mom, who I felt very protective about, and I didn't like what he said. and it just riled me up out of nowhere. Like, I didn't even know that was in me because I'm not.
Yeah, it just happened. Like
Exactly.
he said it, and then he said it, and then you were hitting him.
Yes, like it was an auto response. I'm gonna be honest, like I kind of like blacked out almost, like not literally, but I kind of just after it happened,
yeah.
I was like, holy shit! Like I just physically assaulted somebody because they said something about my mom. It was just words, but like I couldn't handle it, and I'm saying that because Will Smith's like I don't like obviously yes, I don't agree with what Will Smith did, but again, there's some things that you could say to people that will get them to be violent. There are words like people think that there are no words that you could say that should make somebody physically assault you. I don't agree with that. I think that there are things that you can say that will get a physical reaction from certain people. And a lot of it usually is like talking about people's dead relatives, right? Like that could be a really sour spot. Like if you said something about somebody who was dead. And
in general, I think hitting people should be more acceptable. As a side note, I do think in a for real, look, in a normal setting, right?
Yeah.
If Chris Rock and Will Smith are just two guys at on the block, and one says something about and like, I do think there needs to be a precedent for like checking someone's mouth because sometimes people say a little bit too much, thinking they can get away with it.
I started this podcast off saying that the internet has gotten people to be brazen.
Yeah, and so
people
you need
just
to be able to get
your
checked sometimes.
Your dead grandma,
I just think,
like they'll just fucking say it. They'll just say something about your dead grandmom, like on the internet, like that's okay, but they would never say that to you in person. Do you know why? Because they're afraid of getting hit in the face. But I feel like because we've been behind computers for so long, people have started to forget that you can be hit, like that people will hit you. And I'm again, this is not even a Will Smith, Chris Rock situation. This is just period. I'm talking about like now I'm just talking about in general, like you're saying about being hit.
Because I think that like once again, I said setting and context matters, and the setting and context of the Oscars or whatever, it being like I think it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But in a general setting, when you're just on the street, sometimes people say things not realizing that like you can be checked.
Yes. And so again, go ahead.
What I'm getting from y'all is
let
me like y'all want to go and hit people. Understood.
Dude, I want to hit people. All right, I want to hit people.
No,
I'm just saying,
I guess I have a more. All right, so I guess I have a more like I don't want this to sound insulting. A more civilized outlook on it, right?
You can call it what you want.
Well, I'm insulted.
You can call it what you want.
Generally, people shouldn't be going around hitting folks. That said, I am not someone that says violence is never the answer because I guess the way I view it is like I look at something like Stonewall. Violence was absolutely the answer.
Yep.
In that case, violence was the end. And in a situation where what you're saying could actually harm, like somehow incite harm or cause harm to either an individual or a demographic of people, if violence is the path that you choose, then like power to you, which I guess is kind of why like I think this situation is kind of like
this situation is between two privileged groups of people.
Right.
These are two very privileged groups of people. It's over a joke. And it's also some shit that Will Smith is dealing his own trauma response, because it's a trauma response. What he did was a trauma response from his childhood. I'm just calling it what it is. He already has blatantly said that he's had issues with the way his mom was beaten as a kid and feeling powerless. And maybe that was a trigger for him. What Chris Rock said was a trigger for him, and it made him react like that. Again, I think violence is sometimes warranted, like how you just, I really do. I feel that that is an opinion expressed by me, is not by anybody else. Like I feel like sometimes violence is the only way, because as a black man in this country and knowing our history, sometimes violence was the only way for us to get our fucking point across. So I empathize with people who are like, sometimes, now this situation with these two,
ask nicely, like, all right, guys, can we stop slavery now?
Yes, exactly. Like,
how about now? Next week,
can you please stop whipping us, please? Like that didn't work. So at a certain point, it's like, fucking talking isn't working. Like all this kumbaya nonsense that people want you to be on in a perfect world, in a perfect world, that's great. But I'm tired of people acting like, especially coming from a demographic of people who have had the privilege of never having been enslaved or whipped or hung or lynched or anything like that, right? Like, it's easy to say like, oh, violence is never the answer. Like, you've never been put in a situation where you needed to be violent, though. Your people haven't been put in a situation where you needed to be violent. So it's easy to say that. Like, I wish I could say the same thing. Like, I wish I could.
it's a nuanced layer of this that I feel like a lot of people either don't get or ignorant of or just
Yes,
aren't
that's the
thinking
thing.
about.
Not everyone can
Because
relate when I say that. Like that might put a lot of people off. Like, holy shit, you're saying
like
you're for violence. Like, yes, in some situations I am because that's how I got. That's the reason why I'm able to do this fucking podcast because violence had to happen. Like that had to happen for me to be able to do this. It literally was not going to happen any other way. As unfortunate as that is to say, it was not going to happen. It wasn't going to happen by a conversation.
No,
A
it was
war had
not.
to be fought. A
wait,
fucking war.
wait, you had to get violent?
I had to get violent.
A war had to happen.
What?
Like
What?
people fought.
What?
Like people literally fought to
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
the world the way it was, which is wild. And like not to get too deep and crazy about it, but like yes, sometimes violence actually is the only way, and it's unfortunate. Like I wish it wasn't that way. Like trust me, I wish that the world was perfect too. Like I wish that everything could be dealt with a conversation.
And all of that to say, though, violence wasn't the only.
It wasn't
way
the correct
at
way.
the Oscars the
Yes.
other night.
That and I started this podcast off saying that like I do not agree with what Will Smith did. I don't think that was an appropriate response for
Honestly,
to do what he did.
when one of my first thoughts when I saw it, maybe it was like the second or third time I saw it, I was like, you can do that? Because
I'm
like
just shocked that nothing happened,
my
Anthony.
thought was like, yo, I think that Will Smith's black ass forgot he was black.
Yeah, I
Because he
think
just went up and assaulted someone on live TV in
on
front of
live.
everyone, recorded. And I was
No.
like, yo, he could actually just go to jail. And
Yeah,
And you know what? The real answer to your question is, and it's not that he forgot he was black. You forgot he was Will Smith. That's what it is.
so I guess it was like one of those like OJ moments, like OJ got up because when
Bitch,
I
I'm
was younger,
OJ.
when I
Right.
was younger and it happened, I had no idea what it was about. I was like, I don't know, like a kid. But I do remember my parents and all their friends being happy that OJ got off. And I don't think it was like,
I remember
oh,
that too.
we're happy that he got away with murder, where it was, we're happy a black man got away
Yes.
with
Wait,
murder.
do you know? I don't know if I've ever
That's
told
exactly
this
what it
story on
was,
the
and my
podcast.
family was exactly the same.
I don't know if I ever told the story in the podcast. When it got announced he got off, I was is it Chicky and Pete's? I think it might have been Chicky and Pete's. I think at the time my mom worked at Chicky and Pete's, right? If you know about the tri-state area, you know what Chicky and Pete's is. So I was there, like she was at work, and the bar was fucking filled with people. Filled. And they were watching the OJ trial. When it got announced that he was not guilty, when I tell you, the room erupted. Because I remember I was in the bar waiting for my mom to get done work when the OJ trial happened. The bar erupted in cheers. It was
Right.
fucking crazy.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like Anthony also said, our families. I think for Black people, we felt like it was a victory because this is we got to put some context to it. I'll just add something real quick. This was at the time of the Rodney King thing, where police brutality. It was caught on camera that Rodney King had just gotten his ass beat by LAPD, and there had already been historical violence between the LAPD and Black people. So put it into context. OJ in Los Angeles, right? Like this is where this whole incident happened in California. There had already been a thing about Black people and the police. So when OJ was being tried and their police are testifying, it came out that one of the police officers was racist, that they may have planted evidence. There was all types of stuff in context. So Black people felt like it was a victory, not because OJ had gotten away with murder necessarily, but because a Black person had literally walked free, having done it or not.
A Black person won over the American justice system.
Yes.
Which it does not. There are biases against you if you aren't white.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work in your favor if you aren't rich. So for a Black man to get away with murder in the American justice system,
it was
everybody
huge.
was like, oh shit, it's possible.
Right. It was a huge thing, and we all know OJ did it, right? Like allegedly. Like everyone pretty much, it's kind of like at this point inside joke. Like OJ did it. You ever see Barbershop where Cedric the Entertainer? he's in the bar. OJ did it. So that, like it's one of those things. Yeah, what OJ did, not right. Definitely not right. I do not advocate for that shit at all. But for what it meant, it really was symbolistic, if anything. That's what that at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So. It was. But I don't think that Will slapping Chris Rock was supposed to be symbolism for protecting black women.
Oh no,
and,
Not at all.
and protecting like black women's hair and the discrimination that they face for having bald heads and certain kinds of hair and not being appreciated and stuff like that. I think that's a completely separate topic. And if you obviously people listening to this, if you disagree, like let us know. We have no problem. Like this is a very opinionated topic. This is a very multi-layered topic. I think there are so many things that go into this. Like again, Will Smith and his own personal trauma. People think that he was doing it because it's my wife, and but yeah, part of it is that, but also part of it is probably because of what he said in his book. I watched my mom be beat as a kid, and I was powerless, and I did nothing, and I feel like a coward. So he felt like maybe in this moment that he had to prove himself, and his own ego is part of the reason why he went up there on that stage and slapped Chris Rock.
I want to mention, I talked about this yesterday on the stream. I just want to bring it up. Jaden Smith and his tweet.
Yeah, this is how we do it.
After it happens, Jaden Smith tweets, "This is how we do it," and it was so cringy to me. I just my visceral reaction when I saw that was, first of all, you don't do shit. Like, you are just your dad's coattails. Like, Jaden Smith is in the position that he's in because of Will Smith. Right?
It's the fact that he's Jaden Smith. Because if let's say 50 Cent was a part of Will Smith, like he was his second cousin, and 50 Cent was like, "This is how we do it," I'd be like, "Yeah, well, it's expected coming from him."
It's 50, right? But it's Jaden saying it, who's Yeah,
Jaden's a suburban kid who grew up in riches. He's never known any kind of struggle whatsoever, and not at all. And I don't.
Jaden Smith ain't out here bitch smacking.
I've never known Jaden to be violent. I don't think there's any reports of Jaden being violent. I don't think there's reports of Jalen ever being in a fist fight or any kind of physical altercation whatsoever. For him to say, "This is how we do it," as if to say like, "This is how my family handles things," is a bit ridiculous. Also because Will Smith doesn't even handle things like this.
He doesn't. This is one of the reasons why this is news is because it's Will Smith.
Yes.
And this isn't how Will Smith is known to handle things. Number one. Number two, I also want to say this. Even though I said this before, even though I disagree with Will Smith's reaction, in the context of his son saying this is how we do it, I at least respect that Will Smith is the man to do it himself. Whereas Jaden Smith, if Jaden Smith, he wasn't going to go up on stage and smack Chris Rock. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I at least respect, even though I don't agree with it, I respect that Will Smith has at least proven, I guess, when it's time for him to get busy, he gets busy on his own. And Jaden Smith isn't the guy to get busy on his own.
Yeah,
Jaden Smith ain't bringing West Philly to that stage. That's all.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
And in this context, that would be the right thing to do. I agree with not getting busy on the stage. However, it's just the fact that it's this weird twist of fate where it's like, because you're trying to act tough when we know, it's like, come on, man, relax.
Yeah.
It also really just bothers me because like Jaden Smith, right? Jaden Smith is like androgynous. He wears skirts. And like the thing is like that's not only is like that fine, but I thought that when I first heard that, I thought that was great that he was doing that because
I like that about him.
I thought that it was wonderful that he is dismantling a lot of like the toxic masculinity in the Black community, specifically about like men having to be, men and like hyper masculine. And then he turns around and he's like, "Yeah, don't disrespect my bitch." And I'm like, damn, bro, like, yo, motherfuckers turn on a dime.
Yeah, another layer to it. Like the toxic masculinity of, a woman needs me to defend her and be violent for her, and damsel in distress syndrome.
If Jada smacked him, it'd be such a different conversation.
Do you know
Jada got up on stage and smacked him?
So that's one scenario. The other scenario that I heard from Bob the Drag Queen was, what if Will went up there, grabbed the microphone from Chris Rock and was like, "My wife has alopecia. She suffers from this illness, which makes her bald, which is why she shaved her head. She really doesn't like what you just said, and I need you to apologize right now."
Oh man, if that happened, the world would be like, cancel Chris Rock. Chris Rock.
Do you know the response?
Man,
bro, he would have ruined him with that.
Yeah.
If he would have grabbed that microphone and said those words, like, this is from Bob the Drag Queen. This is how he said, if he would have walked up there and grabbed that mic and said, "My wife suffers from alopecia, an illness that she cannot control. Please do not make fun of her appearance. She does not like it. I need you to apologize in front of all these people right now." How not only awkward, but how insane checkmate he would have put Chris Rock in.
What's insane is that in the end, Chris Rock at no point thought he was going to get smacked because he said, when Will Smith goes, he even says, he calls him Richard. He goes, Richard.
Uh-oh.
And on top of that, he has his hands behind his back. And he almost has like his face forward, but I think Chris Rock legit thought Will Smith was going to go up there, take the mic, and say something.
Yes.
And I think Chris would have been completely okay with, like, he was cool with it. You know what I mean?
I mean,
he did not expect to get smacked.
I don't think if Will Smith was walking towards me, especially after seeing him laugh at something I said, I don't think that in a million years I would expect that I'm about to be attacked.
Yeah.
At the same time, none of us except for Chris Rock saw his face. So I don't know. Man.
That I guess I don't know if there's a camera view of Will Smith.
Sometimes in the moment you know when you're in danger.
When you look at his face, Chris Rock, he didn't look like
Chris Rock looked like he knew it was coming. Yeah. I did want to read Will Smith's apology that he posted yesterday. So it says, "Violence in all of its forms is poisonous and destructive. My behavior at last night's Academy Awards was unacceptable and inexcusable. Jokes at my expense are a part of the job, but a joke about Jada's medical condition was too much for me to bear and I reacted emotionally. I would like to publicly apologize to you, Chris. I was out of line and I was wrong. I'm embarrassed and my actions were not indicative of the man I want to be. There is no place for violence in a world of love and kindness. I would also like to apologize to the Academy, the producers of the show, all the attendees, and everyone watching around the world. I would like to apologize to the Williams family and my King Richard family. I deeply regret that my behavior has stained what has been an otherwise gorgeous journey for all of us. I am a work in progress. Sincerely, Will."
Now, is that a real apology?
Well, you know,
like,
maybe
did it really come from him? Because you said the Chris Rock one wasn't real.
Maybe I'm a cynic. Maybe I'm just a cynic, man. But to me, that's PR. Because he goes up on stage an hour after he smacks Chris Rock, and he gives his Oscar speech, and he apologizes to the Academy. He apologizes to the Williams. Yeah. He does not apologize to Chris Rock. Not only that, he defends his actions. Like, he gets up there.
Yeah, he basically says, that is what his first apology to the Academy was I'm protecting people who need protection.
I'm protecting my family. I'm a defender. I'm a protector. He even then says, and I thought this was like so fucked up and like trying to be cool. He says, when you're famous and you're in the position that I'm in, a lot of people say things about you and you're just supposed to smile and take it like it's okay. But he says it in a way as if it was a random paparazzo talking about him and not Chris fucking Rock, who's also famous and people talk about. Like, Chris Rock knows what it's like to be famous and have people talk about him. Like, he says it as if like it wasn't Chris Rock who we're talking about here. And he just kind of like, when I listened to, he defended his actions to smacking Chris Rock without blatantly saying it. He doesn't apologize to Chris. And then he apologizes to the Academy, like, fuck them. And he apologizes to the Williams family. And it's like...
And this is written, which I think that this would have been more impactful and believable if he actually he went live and said this instead of, we don't know, like you said, Anthony, is this real? We don't know if he actually wrote this at all. Like,
yeah, this could have been written by his fucking lawyer.
Anyone could have written this for him and posted it.
Most probably it was.
Yeah, like
most probably like an agent or something of his is like, look, man, Will, you gotta, and you gotta put it like a real apology, and you gotta say
we don't know if this came from him.
Reputation, blah blah blah. So yeah.
So I think it is important that when you publicly upset someone or do something wrong like that, that the apology should be as loud as the insult. Yeah. And so he should have gone live because he's gone live many times. He's made all kinds of reels. People love him.
He's a huge YouTuber, isn't
he? Now he is. Will Smith just started during the pandemic on Instagram. He has 62.4 million followers on Instagram right now. And he just started an account less than 2 years. His account was less than 2 years old. He did not have social media before the pandemic.
I also thought it was weird seeing all these people saying like Denzel Washington, Tyler Perry, and like I forgot the other guy's name are consoling Will Smith. I was like, what the fuck does he need to be consoled for? I was so confused. I was like, why is Will getting consoled?
Yeah, I did see that. I actually saw the little huddle they had. And then I think Denzel said, when you're at your highest moments, that's when the devil comes. Something like that.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. It was weird. It was just weird in general. I think Jim Carrey, and I said this myself on the stream last night, but I think Jim Carrey came out and said, like, he thought it was really weird and awkward at, like, all of the people cheering after he got the Oscar, like, because it felt weird. It's like we just watched this man smack somebody an hour ago.
Yeah.
So when he got up on stage, like if you just looked at just the Oscar speech in a vacuum, it's so weird that it doesn't feel like anything happened. Like everybody, it just feels like everything just went on like normal. I can't believe he was
allowed to just go on about his day.
Yeah, like you
said
really
earlier,
weird.
That sets a really bad precedent.
Yes.
Not for the not for the Oscars, but like comedians in general. And I think comedians have come out, like Wanda Sykes and stuff. They've come out, and Jim Carrey said in that same interview that you're talking about, how this is kind of scary for them because this could result in, and hopefully it doesn't, but this could result in people thinking it's okay if they feel offended to walk up on stage and assault the comedian.
Yeah. And comedians don't walk around with security. Like,
no.
You know what I mean?
No
like,
one
comedians
saved Chris
don't
Rock.
have bodyguards.
No one saved him.
Yeah, well,
but moreover, you have the morally indignant part of Twitter that is like, oh, well, you're fucking like just dismissing that in its entirety because I don't know. I guess since Dave Chappelle, they felt like all comedians should die.
That's another interesting point that we talked about. There's this weird, super radical progressivism, radical left, or whatever you want to call it, where they have equated being progressive with justifying violence, where like if you say something that is offensive, it's okay to beat the balls off them. Like because you made fun of a black woman's hair, violence is okay. And it's like a really weird thing because that's not progressive. That's not being progressive. Like resorting to violence isn't progressive, and then justifying, your feelings being hurt with violence. It's just like really weird, and it's something that, I don't know. People. I feel
like it's gonna get to this extreme where, like, for example, Twitter is gonna try and force Daniel Radcliffe to give all of his money to like some kind of LGBT like foundation or something because J.K. Rowling is a transphobe. Now everyone that was in past, present, or future involved with Harry Potter is now like just instantly a bigot. Like that's the energy. That's the energy. And I'm just like, y'all really be like, I don't want to say taking shit too far, but it's like y'all don't think about shit. Like y'all don't think about why it is that J.K. Rowling being just a general bigot is bad. Y'all are just like, oh, J.K. Rowling is bad, so therefore anything associated with her is bad, and so that's just it. Kind of becomes this weird dogma, and nobody actually like analyzes why.
He is just a general bigot, though. Like,
no, yeah, she is a general bigot.
I don't know if people know this, but at some point somebody asked, like, how come there's not any Asians in Hogwarts? And then her response was that there are Asians in Hogwarts. There's an Asian girl, and her name is Cho Chang. And I was like, that can't be her response. Like she can't just say that there's an Asian girl who's. And then somebody also asked if there's any Jewish people in Hogwarts, and I don't remember specifically, but it was something really racist, like Stephen Goldstein. Like it was just like really.
Damn. Like I know J.K. Rowling was about this life. I'm learning right now.
She has said some shit, and it's like, oh, she's just in general not a good person.
I know they call her a surfer or a turf or something like that. I forget the exact word.
Yep.
My man just said surf and turf. I just want you all to know.
He's a surf and turf.
Fraser went to surf and turf. Like,
I'm hungry. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I want a steak and some lobster right now. But I know that they call her some kind of word because she's like anti-trans and all this other stuff.
So she's a TERF, which is an acronym for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. That's what it is.
There you go. Okay.
Which fuck TERFs because like a woman is a woman. It's not about like your genitalia. It's about who you express yourself to be to the world. And if that is if you are a woman and that's how you express yourself, then yeah, shouldn't be if you have a vagina or not. But
J.K. Rowling feels different.
J.K. Rowling can shut the fuck up.
Magic can't change this.
Yeah. Well, okay. I guess that pretty much wraps this episode up of the IMNerd podcast. A little bit of a crazy topic for today's episode, but I still think that it's relevant that we talk about this type of thing because
any closing thoughts?
Everyone else is, yeah.
Can y'all motherfuckers please, for the love of God, the prophet on Twitter known as Sassy Black Diva, she called it. She was like, I will never forgive Will Smith for the 2 weeks of think tanks that we're gonna have to endure. Never. And I agree with her 100%. Please stop writing these fucking 3-page long dissertations on Facebook, on Twitter, on what the fuck ever about this slap. It's not that deep. Even if your points are valid, please do not
do an hour and a half podcast.
Like, oh man,
it's not that deep. An hour and a half into this podcast.
Deep. It's not that deep.
Yeah,
it really ain't.
But yeah, it's interesting. We talked about the event itself, but then also we talked a lot about like the reaction and the way people are treating it. Surrounding all of this.
Yeah, it's wild for sure. Hold on, I'm over here doing a screen grab. There we go. I'll use that as a little preview. You guys can still hear me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my closing thoughts: act up, you can get smacked up. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, but yeah,
Act up.
I don't. In this case,
fuck around and
in this
find
case,
the
I don't
fuck
think
out.
violence was necessary, but I do think that there are, in context, some scenarios that do require violence. This just was not one of them.
Yeah, I've said it before. I, in general, almost always side with the comedian, even if the joke's not funny, even if nobody likes the joke. I understand that comedians have a really weird job where you don't know if you did a good job until after you do
Yeah.
the job.
That is difficult. If it was funny, if what he said was super funny, I mean, Jado could still be mad, but honestly, no one would care because it's
no
just
one
super
would care.
funny.
Yeah, and it's
yeah,
just one of those things. Like when you do most jobs, like you just kind of do the job. With comedy, it's very very weird and nebulous. So I tend to give comedians a lot more leeway. Because at the end of the day, most of the times they're just trying to make people have fun and laugh. They're not really trying to harm people. And if somebody is being a bully and really trying to harm someone or a group of people, that is different. And usually you can really feel that. You can feel when someone's trying to be a bully and when someone's just trying to make a joke.
intention matters.
Yeah, so
Intention matters.
kind of my thought on it.
Before we go, I want to give a shout out to our patrons over at Patreon. We have Connie, Austin, Leon, Quest, Garen, Hylian, TCG Automotive, Silver Chronic, Tyree Tinsley, Dimitri Barnes, Alexander Brissett, Vinny Casello, Dominic Roberts, Game Freak Yoshi, Alex Flamer, Gabe Marini, Henri Reynolds, CJ, WK Dad 1, Saul at Dabber's Gaming Cafe, Dan Vrabel, Dennis Milburn, Joseph Marcello, Scott Page, Red Vines, First to Home, and Dalis Forneris, our newest. Thank you guys so much for supporting the podcast. We really appreciate it. It goes a long way. And as I always say, do the things that make you happy, except if that means smacking the shit out of somebody on live television because of a joke.
Hell yeah.
All right. We are out of here.
Peace.